and welcome to the Linux Spotlight. This show is dedicated to showing off the best thing about Linux, our community. This community is made up of developers, distro maintainers, YouTubers, and everyday users. Each one plays a vital role in our community, and the goal is to have a discussion with each individual about their journey into Linux and beyond. So join me now as we turn the spotlight on. Hello, I'm your host Rocco, and with me today, our special guest is Philip Müller. Phil, how you doing?
I'm great, and are you?
I am excellent. I ran out of coffee, but I did have a cup, so we're good to go.
I have also something to drink.
There you go.
Coffee, more like a lemonade, like this one here.
Nice. All right, dude. I was, when I do preparation for the show, I, do Google searches and I look up, kind of to get a background info on the people that I'm going to talk to. And there are so many Philip Müllers out there that are not you that it's ridiculous. I mean, there's a Swiss politician, there's a German footballer, there's a handball guy, there's a guy that works for Shopify. I mean, there are tons of Philip Müllers out there that, I don't know, dude. I guess it's a good name.
Well, it's my second name. My first name is Hans. So maybe you would have found me with Hans Philip.
If only I knew. So there you go. All right. So most people will know you from being one of the leads of the Manjaro project. They might have seen you on episodes of Destination Linux that you were on. You were on a Biddle episode back in October. Those are the people that would know you. But for those people that wouldn't know who you are, and they would ask you, who would you say Philip Müller is personally?
Well, more like a family man. So in my community, everything is around family. I lived in a really large family, grew up there, had a really good childhood. And I recently married to a Vietnamese girl. And
congratulations.
She has a family.
That is awesome. You said recently. So how long ago?
It was the 6th of December. So when Nikolaus Day.
That is awesome. Congratulations, dude. All right. Do you have any other hobbies, Phil, outside of Linux?
Outside of Linux, I have a lot of hobbies. I had, when I was a child, I was in bicycling. So if you know the things where you drive around the circle with the special bikes on the back wheel and standing on the saddle, standing on the steering. So all those kind of things I did, and I even did that in a team. So I was the team lead, and we had a lot of competitions mostly in Bavaria and Germany.
Wow. And is there such a thing as levels in that where you?
Yeah, it's also it will be going if your standard is like region league, or it also a country league or state league. So depends on which level you are. And in Olympics, I didn't go there, but it's also possible there.
Right. Very nice. That's awesome, dude. So working on and being a part of Manjaro, you come in contact with a lot of people who are already familiar with Linux itself. So you don't have to explain nothing. You can talk about code. You can talk about Linux and not have them look at you like you're crazy. But what about your local contacts, your family, your friends, your relatives? Are they receptive to Linux, or, do they even know what it is?
Well, it depends who you ask for. So when I do judo, which is also one of my hobbies, most of the people don't go about Linux. If I do ask somebody of my rescue squad, because I'm a rescue swimmer as well, most of them are using Windows, because in the Red Cross there is no yet so much in open source. And yes, if I ask people of my dancing class, because I'm also a dance instructor, well, most of them only use the computer or use a phone. So it's not always the biggest in there. And if they ask what I'm doing and explain, and I say, hey, can you earn money with it? Well, kinda. And then the topic is off.
Right. Wait, we gotta back up a little bit here because we passed some of that stuff you talked about. So wait, you're into judo, you're a dance instructor. So tell us about this stuff, dude.
Well, I just tried out several things. So in my childhood, I like to do hands-on stuff, and judo was one of the things to get physical contact. And since I was always bullied in the past, I used something to defend myself. And there was one situation in the gym class that the biggest guy was bullying me again. And then I said, okay, let's do that. Let's slide me through the whole hall. And the gym teacher saw that, and the dude got suspended. And later in a different class, somebody wanted to fight me, and I said, no, I'm against fighting. And he kept going on, and then he took in some punches from me. So I did also karate back then. So,
Oh man.
always hide from the little guys because they might be strong as well.
Right. Yeah, never underestimate a little guy. Well, so you're a dance instructor. So how did that come all about?
A dance instructor, well, I do a modern jive. It's like the rock. It's from England, London, and in France they dance it as well. It's like the normal pop songs you can dance to and everything. It's like a two-step and really easy to get used to it. And the fun thing about it, you don't have to be coming with a partner because you always change between the sets. And therefore you can learn how to dance really. Because you don't get to the one partner and stick to him and learn his falls and correct them and nobody notice. Yeah.
So how did you get involved in that?
Well, when back in the days I was a salesman in Munich and I got bored, single, and didn't know what to do in the evenings. And once I was my Chinese favorite restaurant, I read a local newspaper and they said, hey, there's a new thing in town called Modern Jive, M-Jive. You don't have to come with a partner, go in and have fun. And there I started first as a trainee, and then I went on, learned how to do it, and then I was a sub teacher, and in the end, I even gave my own classes.
Wow. Moving right on up. You are into everything, dude.
Yes, also I did swimming a lot, so the rescue squad was also kind of thing of me because we have a lake in the town I'm living, and therefore it was a good thing. And the town before I lived, there was a big pool outside, and so I started. And it was next to the judo class, so I always did both things at some point.
Yeah.
Really physical.
Well, I don't want to skip anything. So is there anything else you do?
Well, I try to cook a little, and now to impress my wife, I was also in a Chinese restaurant and learned a little bit about what to do there. So she's from Asia, Vietnam, and so my cuisine is more a little bit Asian.
Right.
Obviously.
That is awesome. You have such like a rich life, rich history.
You have always to do and enjoy the fullest, and it's not always about computers.
Yep. Well, see, that's the thing. I think that this series allows people to see the important things in people's lives that, you know, it allows them to see Linux. It allows them to see their computer and technical related background, but it also allows them to see the person behind all of that. And just like your stories, some of them are amazing.
Yeah. And the question back what you had with who is interested in Linux. So my father is currently retired and now he has time and asked me, hey, what are you doing? Hey, you talk about this Linux thing. I gave him some of my CDs and he tried it out and said, yes, hey, maybe I can do something about that. Let's get more in touch. And yeah. So
Bridging gaps there. That is awesome. Hey, so like, is he getting into it to where he's just using it, or does he want to help out with the code and stuff like that?
I think he is first just get used to it because he has own computer shop. So his clients always have Windows. And so he did a lot of bunch of stuff with Windows machines and the OS itself.
Mm-hmm.
And since he's now retired and has less customers, he has more time and people are asking for Linux. And since I'm his son and have a lot of knowledge about Linux, he says, okay, let's give me to play and I will enjoy. And there's a lot of computers in his shop, so he can use it as he wish.
Yeah. But him having a computer background, he's already like technical. So it's not like it would be a far stretch for him to get involved.
Yeah, it's like well in the past, I grew up and I was a privilege to have my father who is more in technician stuff and so. And I started with computers with the parts of a computer. My first computer I had to build up from the ground up. It was a K6 from AMD. My father was always about Intel, and I said, no, AMD is this thing. Also back then, because it was cheaper, I had to buy the parts myself from the money I got. And so I choose AMD because it was cheaper and also back in the day even efficient than the Intel CPUs. So yeah.
So that was your first computer.
Yeah. K6 too. And then I added, what was it? Voodoo graphics card, GF1.
Yep. So your father had his business for a while. Did you end up going to school for coding or anything?
No, I always what I learned, all the languages I learned, I do it by myself based on the interest. So the first language I did was Pascal. And the reason was really simple because I sucked at English. So I had to find something to get to English. And I said, okay.
So you said you started with Pascal, and then what else did you learn?
Well, based on that, I went, Pascal was my thing. I used it also in Linux and then Python. Python was near to that language. And I used Delphi and went to the forum of the Delphi Borland community to learn how that works. And I used Delphi because it was easy to create an UI, which user-friendly. Simply click it through, and the back engine and the language was so easy that I even can write the application. And I did it for 3-4 years, and I had always to struggle and learn back then to save your coding, because when my mother shouted, "Dinner is ready," and it didn't come, she turned off the power. and then the whole day was gone.
Learned that one from experience, huh?
Yeah, always do backups.
Always do backups. That's good advice even today.
Yeah.
So I was listening to Linux Unplugged episode 318, which you were on, and you mentioned that you worked for BMW and Audi, which are pretty big name companies. So can you tell us about your career with those companies?
Well, I didn't work directly with them. I had a subcontractor I was employed with. So it's like Audi and BMW, they have the projects and they give it to other companies who can give them the people who are doing actual work, because they're offshore stuff. And I was in a support team and worked for them. So I started with some silly jobs like in SAP, which is an application where you can do forms and stuff. And with those stuff, I started. Then for our company, it got boring. And I said, okay, why it's the offshore thing? And they said, yes, we do something with a partner company in India, but nobody likes to go to India. And I said, okay, let's go to India then. And I was the offshore manager.
Nice. Hey, you got to go where the opportunity leads, right?
Yeah, and then I learned the country about India and Asia and so, and I really liked it. So it's always about what you do with the stuff.
Yep.
Always go the distance if you like to do that.
So, you were on the interview with in Destination Linux, and you had told us your backstory there. You had mentioned that you found Linux through magazines.
Yeah. Well, I was, let me back up a little. I was always in magazines. I even printed my own magazine. This was from the school. Maybe you see here the brand which I used for the magazine, because it's called Niveau.
Right.
And Nivea was the closest thing.
Printing your own magazines.
Yeah, we did the own magazines, and I was in comics, so I did my own comics back then. So like here.
Nice.
And stuff like that. And since then, I had the computers, and the only thing to get games or stuff was through magazines, so I kept it up. So the first thing what I bought for my PCs were some magazines like this. So this was a LucasArts game, Day of Tentacle.
Yep.
And then they had the Rebel Assaults.
Rebel Assault, yep.
And Simon the Sorcerer, and so on. So those were the stuff which I did there. And then I had the box games like the Unreal or the Resident Evil, which was then a big thing, or the Quake stuff.
Yep.
Were there. And obviously, back then, 2001, there was something like a Linux. So this was the Red Hat. I tried back then out, but it was not the time there yet. So I still went to coding and stuff. And I went back a couple years. So this is also 2001, something like that. 2003, there was SUSE. And then we had another Red Hat, which was 2003 as well.
Right.
So they had really magazines where everything was written and really put out. Then we went 2006. So this was the Ubuntu era, where it then started to get really hooked. So this was the Kubuntu 606, which I started. And I switched between Kubuntu and Ubuntu, which also did 2006. And I tried Madriver at some point, but I didn't like it. So this has still the DVD is untouched.
So what was that first experience like with Kubuntu?
The first experience with Kubuntu was clunky. It was KDE, which was not as good as it is now. It was heavy loaded and the PC was really slow. So I stick to Ubuntu itself with the Gnome desktop and loved it. And I see, okay, it's already finished. I want to do something which I'm capable of. And I looked at the distribution nobody knows, which was Paulo back then. And I looked at them, how they install it. They had a live ISO, which gives you the DOS prompt. Because back in the days where I started to build my computers, I was more in DOS, so in the terminal as well.
Right.
And they used the terminal as well. So with my background as Pascal, I used Free Pascal to create my first live CD with an installer and presented to that community and said, hey, why you don't do that like this? And they said, okay, your installer sucks because it's not an Linux application. And the lead of them recreated my installer in the language called Vala.
Yep. Well, you had sent me a link to your post about the Paldo installer, and I'm looking back at all of this stuff, and I'm looking at it's so cool to look back at it and see the kernel version. I think it was 2.6, and like the NVIDIA driver was like 1.0 something. Like all of that is so awesome to look back at and think of how far we've come to today. So, yeah.
It was pretty hilarious. I stick with them a little bit, and then the Arch thing comes up, and I was more, because I was fed up with the GNOME 2 thing, so I looked again for a new desktop, which was KDE back then again. And I looked, okay, which community does KDE best? And there was the small community based on Arch. They did a KDE mod. So there was John Mette back then, and he created the stuff, and then the cat and mouse game with Arch started. because
Mm-hmm.
we had to build our packages, which were splitted. Back then, KDE was coming in this big chunks of turbos, and we find a way to even create some split packages for Arch. And everybody who's using KDE mod loved it, but it sucked because as soon as Arch has updated the library, we had to rebuild our packages.
Those were not fun days back in that era.
It was always working at some day, and with the update, the whole thing broke. But we had a cool installer called Tribe, and we went then, and then I talked to John. John, we have to do something. We have to split from Arch. We have to do something different. And then we started, okay, let's clone all the package builds over to our repository and decide when we update them. But we keep updating KDE in top. So the semi-rolling distro called Chakra was born. And I was the release manager. I was in charge to get the ISOs out.
So you were there when it originally started?
Yes, I started alpha releases and went on. And I did a bunch of releases from 2009 to 2011 after I split and went over to the little project called Manjaro.
Yes, that little project. We're going to get into that little project called Manjaro. But let me back up just a minute and say you had said you started in Linux, or you had tried like Red Hat and it wasn't ready. You went back to Windows. How long did it take you to make that jump full time from Windows to Linux?
Well, I did it when I was working on Paldo. So it was 2007, 2006 in that area. I said, okay, I don't need Windows anymore. So it was pretty early.
Pretty early, yeah. So do you use Windows or Mac at all right now?
I use Windows always in a virtual machine once a year to do my taxes.
You're not the only one that does that. I'm just saying.
Well, now I don't have to do it anymore because now I have a whole department who is doing my taxes. So it's the benefit of having a company.
Yes, there you go. So the Windows virtual machine can go.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you mentioned that you had tried, you were looking for a landing spot, basically. You tried Red Hat, you tried Mandriva, Ubuntu, and you were looking for KDE. I've distro hopped a ton starting, years ago. And I've kind of settled down to the point where I just want a stable distro on my main machine. I have a test machine for trying out distros. Was there a time when you were like a distro hopper that you just wanted to try every distro out there?
Not really. I always tried the distros I choose. They had a purpose. I want to understand what's going on. So I looked always deeper in the packaging. And if I understand how to do a package for the distro, I will stick with that distro. This was with Paldo as well. Paldo used XML text files. So you had a structure, you know where the dependencies are, and you can simply adopt and write down. And the fun thing was they used a server which automatically built all the packages back then. So there was 3 people doing that, the students from Switzerland university, and they're still maintaining it because it's automatically. They don't have to do anything. They only have to check what is the new versions. I think they even automated that. And based on that, they make the ISO releases automatically. And only you have to know how Git works and pushing out your code into Git and then the machine doing it. And the same goes to Arch-based Linux distributions where it's just text or shell script which used to create the packages. And from the desktop point of view, it always was what is the more pragmatic one back in the day, and I liked. So it's more like use the tools which are best for you to get your stuff done.
Yep. That's a good outlook. I agree. So, I mean, obviously, I'm going to assume that you have Manjaro on your personal computers. But what desktop environment do you choose for your machines?
Well, currently it's running Xfce, the 4.14 release.
And now, is there a reason why you chose Xfce over KDE or Gnome, or that's just the way it happened?
It's for me at the moment. It's more. I like the applications like Sooner. Is for me the best browser for files. I never had issues with it with Dolphin and the other stuff which is used by Gnome. They're not like in my workflow. I like simplified file browsers. Mostly I work with full screen, so I have still the bottom bar, which have the application and stuff, but they will automatically slide down. So I have the full screen, and I work with tabs and keyboards, and so it's like Xfce doesn't change; it's always the same, and goes away and let me keep quiet stuff working, so be more productive.
Right. Well, I will disagree with you on one thing. That is, Dolphin is the best file manager on the planet. I'm just saying.
For me,
but it's okay. You could like what you want.
Because if I use Dolphin or the other things, I have issues with the files which I editing. So if I click on right click, open terminal and stuff, it works better for me in Sooner.
Right. Good. Well, you mentioned how you came about going from Chakra to Manjaro. But how big was the Manjaro team when you started with them, and like when exactly was that?
Well, it's always like I get bored at my birthday, so always when I have birthday, something happens right after. So
okay, I have to remember that.
yeah, it's in April, so I always change there, and I looked at the Arch forum once and saw, okay, there's a new thing called Manjaro Live CD and so on. I tested it out, and then Roland was there, who is the founder of the project, said, okay, I have this idea, and I talked to him and say, hey, Roland, what you do is wrong. And he said, why? You tried to create a live installer for Arch, and that is wrong, and it doesn't work out. And then he said, hey, why? Because I had the same problems with Chakra, and let's get together and talk about what we can do about it. And then I found out that he is living 2 towns away from me, so it was a really short distance.
Wow. So you were able to get together then and actually talk face to face.
Yeah.
That is great. That does not happen all the time. So that is excellent.
Then I meet the crew. The only person who was not there was Gnome, because he is in France. So it was a little bit harder to get to him. But everybody else was German-based in Bavaria, near Munich. So it was easy to get in touch with them in person. And then we sat down and said, hey, let's get Manjaro off the surface for at least 1 year, figure out what we do. And when we are ready, we will make an entrance, which was then with Manjaro 08.
Well, you had mentioned that the installer, you needed an updated installer, basically. Years ago, Linux wasn't polished as it is now. So along with that installer, what was it like working in Linux or working on Manjaro in those early days? Was there a lot to change, basically?
Well, first we had to get the Arch packages on our infrastructure. So we created one server and worked on the tool called Boxit to make it work like in Git. So you have a sync, like you do in Git sync, we do it Boxit sync. We get all the packages to our server. And then you have to work, because the libraries changed, and our packages we put on to an overlay didn't work, or maybe need a rebuild, because the libraries, so names and so ever changed as well. So we figured out the process how we do that. And we created our own installer. It was a good one, which Roland coded, because he was really a script kiddie back then. And he was our coder. I was more the management project lead, and Guillaume still is in charge for the package manager. And then we had a friend who is doing the artwork. So all the sets were there. So we were 4 people back then, which started the Manjaro project. And it took us 1 year to get it polished so we can say, okay, now it's ready to go public.
Right. 4 people a year, that's a lot of work, dude, to get something like that polished enough where it's able to be released. Are there, like, I know that now you over the years have perfected, not perfected, I mean nobody's perfect, but you have made Manjaro so much better than it was. But was there other things that you had in your sights to say, this is something that we got to work on for future releases?
It always comes, well, what we look for, what we do is always the end user experience is first for us. So we look at the theme. The theme has to be polished. Since we have the problems, we have the GDK, we have the Qt, we have the other frameworks out there. GDK even has 2 and 3. So has always to be polished. And of course, the KDE framework. And if you have an application, it should look the similar way as it would. So it's one piece and not getting all over. And lately we see the problem which Linux had is coming now to Windows or Macintosh. You look at the old Windows applications, the new one, they never fit. And Mac OS even have the same problems now because they have the theme hard-coded. And so the one purpose is for us, look first how the theme works and then stick to the theme. And it has to be maintained. Then look which applications the community wants and what applications out of them works for us, and then polish it and get a release out.
Now, the original release there, 0.8, was that both KDE and Gnome or Xfce? Or that's 3. Was that, or was it just one desktop environment?
We started with Xfce because that was what I'm using. So the first one we released to the public was Xfce, but Roland and Guillaume used Gnome. So Gnome was the second which we had. And then as we grow, somebody picked in and put KDE on. I used KDE, so I did also back then an KDE version. So we always had some, like the flagship edition was Xfce, then it took us 1 or 3 months to put out the other ones. So always over the years, we had all 3 major desktops always, but not always at the same point.
Right. So you have had many releases since then. So moving forwards in Manjaro, who's the target audience for Manjaro? Like, nobody will say that Arch is easy or for beginners, but who is the target audience for Manjaro itself?
Manjaro is always like, if you know how to know and work with Manjaro, you can also be a beginner. But the main persons using Manjaro are the average users, which say, okay, Arch is fine, but it's too fast for me. So that's the audience.
Very nice. So you recently, like you had mentioned, decided to take some risks and make Manjaro a company. And if I could sum up from everything that I've heard, for the reasons for this move would be, to secure employment for people like yourself who are working on the project, so you don't have to worry about life issues. You don't have to worry about where your career's headed, because obviously this is a passion project. Are you happy with the way it turned out?
It changed because back in the day when I was employed, I had my structured life. So it was 6 in the morning, I stand up, go to my computer, 2 hours Manjaro, then drive 1 hour with the train to Munich to my work. And then 6 or 8 coming back, 1 hour drive, and then do another 2 hours for Manjaro. And then I was fix and foxy to get off to bed. And then 4 hours later, 6 o'clock, again up and do Manjaro and so on and so on. So now this changed. Now I can stand up at 10 o'clock or earlier, depends what day is and what meetings are or whom I'm talking to, which time zone I've worked with. So I can adjust more, or I can take care of my wife or say, hey, let's do nothing today and skip it as we can do it on a Sundays or whatever.
Right. So what is your official title with Manjaro now?
with the Manjaro project, it's still a Manjaro project lead, and with the company, I'm the CEO. Yeah.
Very nice. So that decision of making Manjaro a company, has your role changed a lot from what it used to be?
Depending in the project, or depending in the life, or what do you
Either
mean?
one or both. You tell me.
In the project, it didn't change because if I'm now the company for the community, I'm still a project lead because who else should decide where we should go? And being a CEO, it's more like you started a company, have additional work, which is not part of the project. So you have to have meetings, you have to establish partnerships with other companies, get Linux out there, be more in the public, which I already did past in the project. So go more to YouTube, make it more public, and talk about it actually. So more people get interested, because in the end, you also want to get a little bit out of it. But the main focus is always for the community, and also listen to the community, which we had with the little thing with the free office we had earlier this
Yep.
year. Yeah.
Well, let's go into that. You decided to put that into an alpha version of Manjaro, I believe, and it was met with some resistance. So tell us about it.
But it was the a tool or a software which everybody uses. So we replaced LibreOffice, which is the de facto standard in Linux, with a proprietary, not well-known, script with functions, free office thing. And people shouted and said, "Hey, this can't work." They even cut out the open source files. You can't do any ODF and whatever systems there. And why the heck they even think about that? And yeah, we will see then. Okay, community is strong. You can't simply change one Office application to another. And we talked to the software company and said, "Hey, the Linux company don't understand why you strip down the features. Well, in the Windows world, it's like only the essential, and if you want to have, then you pay the pro. That's normal in the Windows world, but in Linux, you can't cut off the things." And we talked through, and then the company decided to make changes, and also the free Office by SoftMaker has now the open source file support. So even
Yep.
that we achieved that. So yeah.
Well, there was a lot of pushback from it, but I think that is something that people don't always realize that came out of that. That they did add features into that program then that if you hadn't made that move to put that into Manjaro, we wouldn't have those features today.
No,
And I
of
think
course,
that's I think that's the relationships that you build.
yeah, there was not interest. There was no interest or need to change the software. So this was the good thing about that. And we're still in contact with them. So SoftMaker has developers, and also the lead developer is dedicated to Linux as well. So that's why he's strongly pushing everything. Also the CEO of the company, I have a good relationship with him. And we talked about stuff. And yeah, if you click on the shopping back in our edition, then Manjaro gets some benefits out of that. So if you buy it, it's fine. If you don't buy it, and in the management meeting we had with our stakeholders at Manjaro Company Inc., we decided, hey, if we can't do it like this, then we have to change something. And out of that, in Calamaris, we have this software chooser, which now every other distribution can choose and use differently. So they can say, okay, if you want to install this or that, we have an option. If you don't, skip it. So even there, we created some features. So even so, this effort was paid by our partner Blue Systems, because they said, hey, might need some functionality. So not always free. We have a lot of people who are employed by Blue Systems,
Right.
who work with us. And since we are also a partner company of Blue Systems, we can also decide and have priority in the installer calamari. So if we need something and added new functionality, we are on the top list of all the open issues. So if I pop an issue and we need it fast, then it's done in 2 or 3 days.
Very nice. Well, you had mentioned a couple times if the questions that I pose would be for the Manjaro project or the company. Can you explain a little bit more the difference between the Manjaro project still and the company? Because I'm trying to wrap my head around where each one comes into play.
Well, we have chosen the company to be also named Manjaro if you go for Canonical and Ubuntu. If there would be an Ubuntu company, everybody would say, hey, what is going on?
Right.
Canonical is a company, has more brands, and Manjaro itself, we did it the opposite way. We emerged out of a community, and we could have named our company differently, but we said, okay, Manjaro is a good brand, and if the company is also named Manjaro, then everybody knows, hey, it's now thing. And if you look at SUSE was a company they started, and now there's a community and they decide to make open SUSE. So either way, if you start as a company and then become a community, or the part of a community grows out, or we are the community and then become a company, it is always troublesome to have the same name, but in the end, the people working in the company are still the same people who work in the community. So we thought it would be a good thing not to split and simply name it Manjaro, as
Right.
it has also a meaning to it.
Well, that's a perfect explanation, kind of spells it out of what the difference is. So I appreciate that. Are there plans to employ more people in the Manjaro company?
Yes, for sure. We have still the funds to do that. So we calculated for the first 2 years that we can employ in total 3. So Bernard and I are working now with the funds we have, and there's still room for one more. But depending on the projects and the relationships we can achieve with other partners, I'll get more funds to give people and working on free software. So yeah, there's always room to grow.
All right. So, there's so much work that goes into releasing even a small distribution. I can't imagine how much work's involved in releasing in such a huge project like Manjaro. You got the main versions, you got the community versions. What is the hardest part about doing a release?
It is always, if you have more editions, you have to see, okay, what is the release plan of KDE? What is the release plan of Gnome? What is the release plan of Xfce? Xfce is more, you can predict more because it's always every 2 years, something like that. But KDE, for example, is every month something changes. So if you go even down to the Git releases, every day something is changing. And Gnome is half a year always, so you can predict that. But you also can predict the failure because every Gnome release, all the other desktops don't work anymore.
That's not good, dude.
So we had to choose always in the past, either when Gnome is done and we stabilize, then we release, or we release early before a new Gnome version comes out. So that was in the past, and now it's more settled. The last 3 or 4 Gnome releases didn't have the impact as it had before.
Right. Yeah, as a matter of fact, now that you mention that, I didn't hear, like you used to hear a lot of that where Gnome broke everything that when it came out and released, and that has gone less and less lately. And this last couple of releases, I haven't heard that.
Yeah, it's always like Gnome is backed by Red Hat, so they are using Gnome as their primary desktop, and KDE had a lot of sponsors, so there's Kubuntu, there is Blue Systems supporting them, and OpenSUSE or SUSE. What you can see, it's always there. If there's a company behind everything, then it gets more structure and gets stabilized, and therefore that's better.
We just talked about it being difficult to release. How many people are on your Manjaro team as far as helping out with the releases themselves?
It's about 4 to 5 people, depends, because you have to organize the software you put in. If you have a package manager version, then you have to talk to Gnome. When does he release or when is he ready? Because he's a teacher, so he has some schedules to attend and so. Then I talked to Bernhard, who is in charge for the community releases. So he has to talk to all his maintainers, what they want to do. And for the main releases, I'm the release manager, so I can decide when it's ready. But I have to talk to our artwork team. I have to talk to our maintainers and see what's going on. I have to talk to the packagers and the developers who are doing our core tools. And if they say it's ready, then we can say, okay, let's go for some alpha, beta, and release candidates, and then put it out there.
So you have a couple guys at the top doing the decision making as far as when it's going to be released and stuff, but you also have all of these teams working together as far as the packages and whether they're ready or not. Like, if you could guess how many people are involved in an actual release, what would you say?
About 12 people, because that's the core team, and we also have a Telegram chat, and we always pop in a question, hey, are we ready, or what is the issues? And we also talk to the forum moderators, what they see, and if they say it's calm, then it's always a good, yeah. So 12 people in the core and maybe 5-6 people more from the forum. Yeah.
That is not a lot of people to do the work, the amount of work that needs to be done for a release, dude. That is not a lot of people, so there's a lot of work involved.
It's like if you automate stuff, it's easy because I can pop out a stable release of the main editions in 1 hour, so it's no problem.
It's easy. It's no problem, he says.
It depends what's coming out, because if you have a bad snapshot and a bad kernel, it might not work. So it's always, if you have a release, then you have to at least test it on the main hardware you have.
Yeah. So, in life, we make mistakes. We try to learn from those mistakes sometimes. There have been many decisions over the years for Manjaro. Is there something that stands out in your mind that you would have done differently now if you could do it over?
It depends, because it's always a complex thing. If you have an error make, then, as you said, you learn from it. We did that with the free office thing, but this was now. In the past, I think we were maybe sometimes too early or didn't find the right spots where to update or give it more time to let it move when we did a snap from one branch to another. And yeah, it's always like listen more to the community, listen what they might have, and fix their issues before you do a major release. Yeah.
All right, so I hear there are plans in the works for Manjaro being on some new hardware. Can you give us any update?
Yeah, we have a partner, Tuxedo Computers, which is also from Germany and also near based to our headquarters, so we can travel to them. So we are near Munich, they are near Augsburg. So it's a distance of about 50 kilometers. And with that, we can talk directly face to face. Now we are working on the concept of how to advertise our new products, which will be 2 laptops. We have one 14-inch full aluminium, 1.4 kilograms in weight, and it will be fanless. So you can use that machine in your library and nobody is bothered by any fan noise because it doesn't have any. It has no mechanical drives, all SD, and therefore it works 14 hours up to 24 hours, depending how you use it. So,
right,
which is really great. And the other model is more for musicians or video editing. It has more horsepower and little fancy keyboard you can adjust the lightnings. So Bernard is really proud to find the Manjaro green.
I did see the Manjaro green, so that was pretty cool.
And with that, we have those out mid-January.
Mid-January. Very nice. Very nice. Are you guys also developing, or like there's all kinds of rumors around, but you're developing a ARM-based Manjaro too as well, right?
Yes, we have another partner, which is Pine64. So we started with the Pinebook, which is the old one. So there we put Manjaro on. And then we derailed and tried one of our own laptops, which was the Bladebook. Similar, it was 300 euros around. And the latest we're working on is the Pinebook Pro, which is for $200. And it's similar to the Bladebook we had, an alloy magnesium case and really good hardware. Yeah. And of course, we have also some ARM phone in the making.
Very nice. I love it. I can't wait for a Linux phone, dude. I can't wait.
So that's the projects we are currently doing on the hardware side.
Very nice. That is good stuff, man. Well, let's talk about conferences for a little bit. So I've seen in social media that you attend conferences all over the world. So have you been to any recently that you can tell us about?
One of the interesting conferences was Snapcraft. This was in Montreal, Canada. So I was invited by Wimpy, Martin Wimpress. And he said, hey, let's come over, talk about how we can implement snaps into Manjaro. And the goal was only to implement snaps in Manjaro and not bring any features to it. And out of the meeting, we got with support for the ISO. You can now add snaps if you want it. And we have the full confinement. So we are on par with Canonical, with the security and stuff. So we have Armor installed, and all the snaps used by Manjaro are sandboxed. So you can decide which snap will talk to each other and to the host system. So yeah, that was the achievement. And Martin was so impressed, also Popey, because they never dreamed that I come there and do it in 1 week, the complete implementation.
Again, I have to say that seeing people face to face and working with them face to face is so much better than, doing it through email or, the way we're connecting. What is it like for you to connect with people like that and do basically work together?
It's like a booster. If you have all the people you need in one room and then you simply say, hey, I need this, I need that. You don't have to go to emails. You have not going to bug tracker and wait for the answer and simply say, hey, I need this, who has an answer. And if you talk to the kernel guy, he give you the answer. Then I got the patches. I really quickly put them in. Let the laptop run for an hour, which was the same laptop we will give out in mid-January. So it was really tested at that conference if it can development work. So it really worked out. Everybody was even impressed that this small laptop can be used for development. And I said, yes, it's ideal for the conferences. Everybody had to have a power supply, and I used none. And I asked, hey, what is going on? I was there. And 8 hours coding, compiling, and then afterwards we went for a beer. And I was still coding and compiling 4 hours more. And Martin said, hey, what's going on with your laptop? Battery life is immense.
I love it. That's what happens when geeks get together. Just saying. Yeah. So, I mean, you've went to the Snapcraft Summit, but you've went to other conferences. Are there local conferences that you go to in your local area?
Yeah, we have Chemnitz, which is in the north of Germany, which is the Linux days there, and it's one of the biggest we have in Germany. itself. And there we made a nice move with Tuxedo. We had our magnetic Manjaro logos we put on our cars. So we saw on the spot the car of the Tuxedo, and we stamped the cars with a lot of stickers. And then we tweeted, it's better with Manjaro in it.
Oh, I love it. Yep.
And this gave us the partnership with Tuxedo to have them on board and create the laptops we will have. So you have to be differently. They came to our booth and looked at our hardware. We had the partner from Belgium, which is still doing Manjaro laptops and PCs. And they said, hey, what is this? Hey, you're really good, and let's work together. And based on our guerrilla marketing campaign with
I love it.
It's normal stickers, but with magnets, so you can simply lift them off.
So that's the key, huh? Magnets. All right, I have to remember that. So, well, these Linux conferences, they're not just for business. I mean, like you get to actually interact with people, go have lunch with them. Were you able to do that with a lot of people?
Yes, so there was FOSDEM, which we attended as well, and we met TL and Lucas from Pine64, and we said, hey, we have some laptops with us. So, and Lucas got ill, so they had only TL, and I said, hey, let's do the fun thing. Here you go. And I put out a sticker of Manjaro, put it on TL's shirt and say, it looks better on you. And you said, yes. Take the Pine and put it on yours. So we had the Pine and Manjaro logo sticks, and we rocked the booth with TL. And every Pine book had our branding on every. So we put our Manjaro stickers on their products.
See, this is the stuff you don't get to know about. This is the inside story you don't get to see.
Yeah.
Well, my favorite part about the conferences are just being able to talk to people that you just wouldn't be able to get to talk to, and being able, like walking down the hallway, you can stop basically anybody and talk to them about Linux, talk to them about whatever you're doing, and they're not looking at you like you're strange. Like it's almost like a whole bunch of friends together, regardless of who it is. So.
And there are funny things. If you look, and afterwards we had a big meeting with Pine in a beer shop, and a lot of developers were there, and we even don't notice because I had to meet Adrian, but I never found Adrian or found the time to go from the Pine booth to the KDE booth, and I didn't know that he was sitting back to back to me in that beer shop because he was also invited. So we never talked about, even if we were in the same room, as close as possible, but we didn't knew each other. So
didn't even know it. Yep. The people that you meet. So yeah. Do you have like a favorite type of conference out of all of them that you've went to?
It's, I think, more or less the Chemnitz, because it's a local based in Germany. And FOSDEM, of course. So we plan a lot of Manjaro developers will attend the 2020 FOSDEM. So if people want to meet us in person and know about the guys behind Manjaro, then meet us there as well. We will most likely be again at the Pine stop.
Yep.
Occupy them again. We will know. And we have some chats with some partners there as well. So it will be interesting to be there as well. So yeah, Chemnitz first and then FOSDEM, of course.
Well, I know Wimpy and Popey. Well, I don't know them personally, but I know them from being friends with them for a while. Were there any shenanigans going on at the Snapcraft Summit?
Well, I learned that they have in Canonical always a yearly event. So Mark Shuttleworth is pushing everybody to counterplay with him. And there was one thing, they had to code a game in, I think, 3 months or whatever. And Wimpy created this shell script game with all the blows and whistles, and that we played there as well.
Nice. Yeah, two great guys, man. Two great guys. So, along with conferences, there's a lot of conferences that are based around open source software. So, are you, you had mentioned earlier about being pragmatic, but are you that open source enthusiast to where you want everything you run to be open source, or are you on the pragmatic side with you use whatever the best tool is?
It always depends. If you see at the open source software itself, there is the LibreOffice, which is the counterpart of the Microsoft Office, then only Office and so on. Everybody tries to copy those big company brands and software they produce. And since Microsoft itself is now more open source friendly and starts to release their common software like Microsoft Teams and Skype also natively over to Linux, you can even use them there. And I see the trend is if you develop for Linux itself, why not use Linux? Okay, Microsoft has still to sell their stuff, so they try to get Linux into their operating system with the VSL. There's also some things you can do, or Valve is doing the Steam boxes based on Linux. And if you look at the Chinese and American embargo, there's Huawei. They have to use Linux now because they can't use Android as they want to do. So there's always opportunity and also dislikes about proprietary software always. But if you have a tool which only exists in a Windows system, like your tax tool, then you have to use Windows for that purpose. Or you find another way to do your taxes differently, like I do now.
Right. Yeah, well, there's a lot of people that feel strongly about this subject. So there'll be people who are on that side where they won't use nothing but open source software. And then you have the people that will like kind of shame you into only using open source software. Like you're wrong if you're using a proprietary software. I am more in the middle of you use whatever tool is the best tool for the job. So if it happens to be open source software, that is awesome, and that's what I want to use. But if the best tool for the job is even a proprietary piece of software, if it's the best tool, that's what I want to use. So,
Yep. But also in the movie business, they use Blender, and you see they reach donations by the studios and so to get Blender more in the way they might need it for their productions. So there's always also the trend of companies who donate money to you might also a little bit interfere and steer it in a different direction. But to have the community itself there, it's always entrusted that it won't happen that a big company will take it over and then it's a company thing again. So right. With open source, you can look into the code and you can fork it if you don't like it, like Xfce for GIMP, because they simply don't want to have the name GIMP in it, so they fork it. So some good reasons, some other reasons which not everybody knows, but open source is always there and might be also a little bit a problem if you split and fork everything. So I think systemd, we have one software to bring stuff again together, but in the end, then somebody says, okay, everybody has to look at systemd itself. So it always comes with some good things or bad things. For example, we are still at 2.4.2 because we can work with the new release of systemd because we have some little issues. So, but you're free to stick to your versions if you like.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, you're right, though. There is always pros and cons to either side of whichever you choose. So, everybody's got to make that choice. And I think that that goes with any area of computers or tech or anything. I mean, security, privacy, you each have a level of what you're comfortable with. So for security, you may, and privacy, you may not want to use anything, say Google, because you don't want them to have any information. Other people have a different level of they only give them certain information, or some people don't even care at all. So everybody has that as their own opinion on the levels that they would allow, and that includes open source software.
Exactly. And if you have proprietary software, you don't know about those things, if they spy on you or not. And that's why open source is the better way to go. And you can contribute to it. And if you like the software, or if you even dislike the software, you can get into the code and change it so it works for you. So if that is the way, then I would say yes, go for open source.
Well, I've talked to a lot of people, and one of the reasons why they get into development and doing things like that is because they see a piece of software that they like, but it doesn't meet their needs for what they need. So they go in and they actually get involved and change it to what they need. And that is a starter for a lot of people to get into coding and whatnot.
Yeah, exactly. This is why I tried to create the Paldo Live CD installer, because I said if you can see the distro and have a functionality, why not? And then might more people gain interest in that distribution, because it's more easier to get on your hardware instead of doing a bootstrap in the terminal. And since I got more and more involved with distro maintaining, I didn't have any time to do the installer anymore. So I used all the software which we had and gave it to Tio, who was back then the maintainer of Calamaris, and say, hey, this is the original installer from Manjaro. You can use the code, because I assume you use C++ and Python for the modules. Do it modular and use whatever code you might need. And he adopted stuff and changed it in his code. So that's how Calamaris started. And we were one of the first distributions who used Calamaris from the get-go. We ditched our installers and used that from there on and worked with them upstream. So therefore, we had a close relationship with the KDE people as well, even so if our main tester was Xfce back then. Yeah.
That's an interesting story of how Calamaris got involved there, or got involved with Manjaro. So I started using Linux back in, I don't know, 2005, somewhere in that area, for reasons like customizing and flexibility. I was into customizing Windows, only you couldn't customize it hardly anything. But I was into trying to customize it. Over the years, I've come to the conclusion that the community is the best reason to run Linux. What drives your passion for Linux itself?
Well, A is that you can change everything, as you mentioned also, and B, the community. If you go into the forum and post something, a question, whatever that reason is, you can wait 5 minutes, 6 minutes, and you get an answer. So it's like if you have a big project like Manjaro, then at each time zone, everybody or somebody is at least there and can give you an answer, which is great. If you open a ticket to Microsoft, then you mostly get some trained people from the first level. They have a checkbox, and if your error is not there, then they skip you to the next one, and so on. Since I worked back then in support, I know how that works, and I had a little issue with my Xbox back in the days, which I bought because of the new Tomb Raider game, and I silly put in all the code for the game. I downloaded it, give the password, and then the machine has to reboot, and it didn't save the password, so didn't know about the thing, and I had to reboot, and I didn't get that game restored because they said, hey, we can't not see if it's you because you're not linked to that account. You didn't link your phone, so we cannot verify that it's you. So for security reasons, I didn't link my account to the phone, and I didn't do auto login. So then I went back to the store and bought the game on the disc. So that was my entrance with Microsoft support.
Well, I mean, you mentioned games, and games have come up a lot in your history here. So what type of game is your favorite?
Well, I'm more like it's different. So I'm more in adventure games. I played a lot the LucasArts games, which was Monkey Island, which is an adventure with a little bit humor in it. or the Simon games were great. Then I was in Star Wars with the first person shooter or the flying stuff. And back in the day when I started, I had this game called Commander Keen, which was really, really nice. We were like a little astronaut and had to jump like Mega Man, so that's things, yeah. And I even played on Game Boy way, way back, which was all with the green screen, and so, yeah, a lot of hours went into there.
Favorite game of all time?
Favorite game was, I think it was something Mega Quest or whatever was on the Nintendo, was the role play similar to Diablo, something like that.
Okay. Are you into first person shooter games or no?
I played a little bit Doom and so, and occasionally if I have to put off Steam, then I might also use some shooter games.
Very nice. Well, let's head back into Linux, I guess.
Yeah. At least most of the games working now in DOSBox and so on, so I can still enjoy these old games now in a new way in Linux. And if you look back for Quake or so, there are now a lot of engines which create the same. You use the same bits of code back in the day and you put into the new engine and you have a brand new game, but it's still the same game. They only change the engines, and quite good to see that still old games get those mods. Or if you see at Morrowind has now a Linux supported engine which has the new reflections of water and stuff like that. So you can imagine that old game back then with the original data, which is only based for Windows, now working in a better quality in Linux.
Right. Yeah. Well, with Proton and things coming along, we are in a great time for games working on Linux. So yeah, I think that it's only going to get better from here, where we continually get more and better games. I think the one thing that it would be awesome if we could get over is that whole anti-cheat software for some of the FPS games, where that's holding back some of those games from being able to be played on Linux.
Yeah, we have to see, but I think maybe it's not needed anymore because Linux itself is there. And if you look at the streaming platforms, which is started by Google, Stadia, and so on, maybe the next thing is going into the cloud. So you more rent a computer and use whatever machine you have, even if it's an old ThinkPad or whatever, you can play the latest games. Only thing what you need is a great internet connection. Maybe that is the thing, and also Linux might benefit because then the game factor is out there.
Right. Well, I did a live stream on Google Stadia, and I think it's an awesome project that has so many possibilities that will only help Linux. It's not a very popular opinion. There's a lot of people in the Linux world that don't like it because it's got the name Google in it. And, what is your overall opinion of that whole streaming games like from a Google Stadia?
I think it's maybe, if you look at what Microsoft is doing with their latest X series of the Xbox, which is more like everybody says it's more like a PC, because you need more house power and you can't fit those in the small console boxes anymore. And if they start to stream also the stuff, or they have this thing with the backports of the old games, it's more the way to go. And yes, Linux is used to give the power to it. You need Kubernetes, you need Docker images, and you need to scale it up. So this, I don't think they use Microsoft servers to do that. They use some Linux with virtualized Microsoft Windows machines on it. And if somebody needs a game, then they simply clone that virtual machine over their Linux streams. And then everybody has their own virtualized Windows on the Linux host system. And that's a win-win. And if you look at Netflix, they also use Linux all over.
Yep. Yeah, Linux is pretty much everywhere. And, I know that Stadia and that whole idea of streaming games is not perfected yet. but I think it has so much promise, and I hope that they just continue and make it better.
It will. Time will tell. Maybe we will be like in the movie One Player and walk around with our lenses and stuff over and on the stepper and experience ourselves as an avatar.
There you go. So for a long time in the Linux community, we have had a bad reputation, and you've been around long enough to have to have seen some of it. Some, people would not be welcoming to new people. You had, I have to reference the RTFM you gave Ryan in the Destination Linux episode, because I mean, we were joking about it, but that was like perfect.
What was it? Ryan reacted like this. What?
Yep. That's exactly how he reacted. It was perfect. But some of it was serious by those people back then. Can you give us your experience of how you've been treated by the Linux community as a whole? Has it been a good experience or a bad experience? What can we do better?
It always depends where you ask and which forum you use to do. But I think if you ask general questions over in the canonical forums, even if it's not the distro, you might get an answer. If you ask a question for a different distro in our forum, you might get an answer as well. Other forums might not be so friendly for, hey, this guy is asking a Linux question, but it's not a distro which we are supporting. But if you see everything is coming together, everybody using almost the same technology, you can always ask a question about systemd in a forum which is using systemd, even if it's not based on the distributions they support, because the only difference is the package manager. But the problems are the same. So,
right.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's an important thing that you just mentioned, that you may not be asking the question in the right forum, but new people won't know which forum to ask that question into. And I think it's important that we as a community as a whole help those people out and answer those questions, because they may be asking this question not in the right way or not in the right forum, but we can always be friendly enough to help them and direct them where to go for that answer.
Yeah, it's if you look at the documentation is mostly the key. If you look at forum in Ubuntu, then there's some reference, hey, look in ArchWiki, because they have it documented a little bit better than we do. Or if you look at Ubuntu users, which is a German forum, they also have a good wiki documentation. It's always which persons, which groups are into Linux and who are they open. So Manjaro itself have the English forum. We have still the German forum on the classic BBS engine. And there is another German forum, because our forum was at some point offline, so they created a new one. So it's always, even by us, it's not in one forum. You find support in different forums. Yeah.
Right. Well, I usually ask the guests if they do any coding. But I mean, obviously, we've talked about your coding experience, your involvement with Manjaro, your development career, goes without saying. And we've talked about the Paldo installer, but you've worked on a lot of projects. Do you have a favorite project or like a favorite piece of software that you worked on that meant a lot to you?
One of them would be the Manjaro hardware detection tool, which was more like the idea of mine. Every distribution has every driver on the disks, and we went the opposite way. We tried to put the drivers on the disks, but not install them. So our hardware detection tool detects your hardware, says, hey, these are the drivers we recommend, and then it will install it during the installation. So you only have the NVIDIA driver when you have an NVIDIA supported card in your PC, not get it automatically installed. Yeah.
So how long have you worked on that hardware detection project?
We worked for the first release, it was half a year based on the blackout we did when we started. And then we continuously worked. And since I think 2 years, less code goes into that because it's more stable. So you don't have to change it. So if you still use a software and you only have to maintain it, then it's still a good software. We only maintain the profiles or change the profiles, but not the software itself. Also, the Boxit tool was a great piece of software. So based, I think it's running now 6 years without any changing on the code. So we only maintain it, and it still fits the purpose as we originally designed it.
Wow. So it's a good piece of software when the code hasn't changed in that long a time and it still works well.
Yeah. At least if it doesn't have any security holes, yes. Then it's a good thing.
Well, we're not talking security holes. We're talking working right. So what is the best thing and the worst thing about developing code, working on projects? Well,
as I learned at my childhood, if the power is off, you might lose the software code if you don't back up.
That is definitely a bad thing, dude.
And always be on point when your mother calls for dinner.
There you go. That's some good advice.
No, seriously, you have to document your code. So if you write code and you put some comments, what is the section for and what is doing there, then you can document in the code and then write later documentation about the whole software. If you don't comment your code snippets, you might forget about it, and then the end documentation might not work. And therefore, the new maintainer or people who want to join your project don't understand what is actually going on with that piece of software.
So when you start a project and you see it to its end, and it's a great piece of software, and it's working, what is your favorite part about that whole process? Is it creating it in the beginning, or is it seeing it to its finish, or what is your favorite part about coding itself?
Well, the favorite part is you created that software and it's actually being used, because if nobody is using your software, there's no need to even create it for. So if a lot of people see, hey, this is the software I want to use, then you're satisfied. You can always try to create a fantastic software out there, but if it doesn't have a purpose or nobody wants to use it, then the purpose is going away quite fast.
Right. So do you have a certain workflow, maybe a set of applications, or is there, like you install a new version of Manjaro, say, on your computer? Is there a list of software that you install that you say, I got to have this to be able to do my job?
Well, of course, we have to have our development tools. So we have to install Boxit. We have to install the Manjaro tools to be able to create the packages or the ISO images. Then I have to have an email client. I go for Thunderbird this day. Then I have to have KeePass for all the passwords so I can log in, because it's a lot of service we have to maintain and I cannot compensate all the passwords needed for that.
I don't blame you.
Then you have to have your developer keys. So the GPG keys needs to be ready. So everything what you sign has to be with your official key. And then you have, of course, you have Git. You have to have SSH to connect to your servers. Most of the software is pre-installed on the standard ISOs we support. So if I install an Xfce, I only have to install the key pass software, Boxit, and the tools, and then I'm set.
So you're pretty much set. You install Manjaro and you pretty much got what you need.
I only have to install 3 software pieces and that's it. And my keys, and maybe back up my history of the email client.
Now, do you have a backup method that you use in particular, as far as like if you install a new machine, you want to get your files onto that machine? Do you use a certain backup method?
Well, we have a backup for our Git on the servers automatically. On my systems, I almost drive on the edge without any backup. So I only have some backups occasionally of my things on the phone, on several other laptops. So if one is crashing, at least I have some of the stuff there. But yeah, I might need to go into more backups as I do for the company. Some of the documentations are needed there as well.
Well, let's hope your wife doesn't watch this and learn the fact that the best way to get your attention is to shut the power down to the computer because you don't have no backups.
I think I told her that before, but I think she forgot about it.
Oh, man. So there are a lot of people who feel they can't contribute to Linux in a meaningful way. People will say, I'm not a developer. I can't code. I can't help out. But everybody has different talents. Everybody has something to give. What would you say to those people who are searching to find a way to contribute to Linux and the community?
Well, it's always, you have to know, if you know what is your strength, what you're good at, then you already have won, because you know what you are capable of and what you can contribute. So Linux itself, or a distribution, it's not always about coding. Coding is, let's say, 20% of everything. Then there is testing the software. So if you want to have the latest and greatest software, and you have a PC and you have time, then for Manjaro, you go to the unstable branch. Then you know, okay, unstable make radio stuff. So you have to be aware of that. And then you can simply install the software and give us feedback. Hey, this and this doesn't work yet. I have an issue with this and that. And then the developers of us can fix that issue for you. And then you can retest. And that is a good purpose, so the people in the testing branch or the stable branch don't face the issues which you voluntarily faced because you want to help out. So testing a software is one part you can do. If you're good in graphical stuff or you're good in video editing, then you can go to our art department and make commercials for Manjaro or the software itself. Or you create the good looking advertise for, now we do with Bogdan, which is our artist from Romania, the whole series of the campaign for the laptops. He's doing a great job. So hopefully before Christmas and after Christmas holidays, we have some Twitter and you can see that. He already did the great artwork for the announcements in Twitter for every release. So if you're good an artist, you can work with him to improve our branding in graphical ways. Or if you're more in answering technical questions, then you can go to the forums and answer the questions a new user might have, as you have experience gained over the years by using Linux itself. So answering the new questions nobody wants to answer is also a good thing. Or write documentation. So if you're more in writing books or in writing general guidelines, then you can either work in the wiki or improve our users guideline or manual we have also in PDF based on LaTeX. So the many ways you can do supporting Linux without even knowing anything about coding. Because coding is more like getting the visions everybody has into the programs to develop and then produce something so it is actually working. And if you use KDE, you don't care what the code is, but you care how the buttons are placed and stuff like that. So This is done by the art team up there. And if they have to talk about, have meetings, how the user might see the buttons, and then based on that feedback, they have to go to the coders and say, hey, we want to have the button upper left, but the coder created it on the upper right, because that's the common thing. Then we have to talk to them, hey, we need it not on upper right, but we need it on the upper left, because it's more convenient for the end user. So those stuff is there. So you can do management, you can work with teams and guide them, or you can say, hey, when is a good time? You can do researches. It's a lot of stuff. So you don't have to be a coder at all to go into open source.
Well, I think those are awesome suggestions. And I think the biggest one is what you said, is find out your strengths and, what you're good at or what you want to do. And there's always something then you can find to do. Those are some great suggestions.
And we are always open and welcome new people who want to join the project, or even now join the company if they give us a benefits. And I think starting in the community, and if something great comes up, and even go up a notch and join a company. Even so, if you have a reputation for Linux, and Linux is more and more companies are used to use Linux, it's good to have. And if you have an opportunity to do certifications on Linux, then do that. If some of your bosses say, hey, there is something called Linux certification, whatever, administration or what's out there, then simply go for it, because the next company you might switch to might search exactly you. And if you have the certification, you get the job. If you don't have the certificate, you might not get the job. So
right.
It's always like depending on the country you're living in. In Germany, it's really hard reputation. If you have the certificates, you get a higher salary and the best job out there. Other countries say, hey, let's show us what you can do, and then we will hire you. So it depends where you live at. But have a certificate in Linux in any way, or doing Linux courses in general, or understand what Linux is, might help you out, even if you want to do being still employed by a normal company.
Yep. Excellent. So, Phil, what do you think of when I say the year of the Linux desktop? Does that mean anything anymore?
Well, I would say let's skip that. Let's do the Linux phone.
The year of the Linux phone. Okay, let's skip that desktop and go to the phone. Okay, so do you think 2020 is the year of the Linux phone?
Maybe not, but Canonical tried it with their Unify, and maybe if we have the right hardware, and I think Pine has a good community around their product, and even Librem doing their phone, which they even have the horrendous 2K American all-in version, which I think only governments might buy.
Right.
Yeah, but it depends on the software, and I see a lot of open source movements in either GNOME or KDE, which working on the phones. And I even think Xfce is. I saw it on some phones already. Yeah, you can almost put everything on those.
So, what do you think is the biggest issue stopping us from having a Linux phone?
I think the usage. Everybody is like, they don't care about what is on the phones. They only care about how easy it is to be used. And most people don't even know that everybody can track you. So if you have a girlfriend and you want to know if they cheat, then you can install on an Android or any Apple like a spy applications, which governments might do anyway. And then you can see where is the person, what does he do, and sometimes you can even turn on the microphone or the cameras of those devices. So there you have the things. People are at these days mostly careless about those stuff. And if you look at the Linux phones, they have the hardware kill switches. So the Librem has it on the side. The Pine phones have it in the backlit with some high switches. You can turn them on and off if you have the camera and so. And it's more like, if you know the Linux itself, the software and open source, then you might also want to know what's going on with the hardware. And that's why we also have in our laptops some kill switches in software mode. You can go to the BIOS and turn off the Intel MCI or the microphone or the modem, whatever. So nobody will track you. So it's more like people with security might go for the phone switch.
Right.
And other people simply don't care. That's the usability. So most likely the usability of the software is not there yet.
Right. The apps being one of the biggest things for me. Like, if I'm going to use a Linux phone as a daily driver, I have to have certain apps. Like for my banking, I use a banking app on my phone, and if that's not available, I probably won't use that as my daily driver. And I think that's a lot of people are in that same boat. It may be different apps for them, but they may need certain ones that if they can't have those, that may be stopping them.
I think it's more the standard. If you have an Android, then you can say, okay, this is the library, this is working out, and so on. So if you look at the package deployment, Snaps is a way you can say, okay, you can have a certain library, but it will come with a cost. You have to install several libraries in the package. Because if you have an old snap, you have to have the old sub library, and then the people can decide. Also, developers of huge companies, they don't have time to adopt a new library and so on. If you go into Arch, they have really, really fast changes of the libraries itself. If you use a Debian-based system, then you can wait 2 or 3 years and everybody can use that, but you have then old software and it's also not the way to go. So always not balanced. So you have to have one distribution platform, which the commercial people like your bank can say, okay, this is secure. Nobody can hack us. And for now, it's iOS and Android where they can at least be ensured there's some security level there. And that is not there yet on the application side. It is there from the security point of view because you know what is on your phone, but try to explain that to your favorite bank administrator of that software. You will say, what is Linux? Linux is not one system. It is hundreds of forks, and I cannot be able to support it because I would have issues or more issues than I would have with certain Android.
Yep.
iOS.
Fragmentation is like the best and the worst about Linux. Like there's so many good things about it and so many bad things about it.
Yeah. Some people will use the phone, so it's fine.
Yeah. If you could change one thing about Linux, what would it be?
One thing about Linux, well, it's really hard because Linux as it is now, it evolved really good. There's not many things you should change at all because you can simply use it and install it. And the best thing is it works from almost every platform. You can put it on an SD card, USB stick. And back in the day when I was still in sales, end of the last 2 years I did sales, I tested my Linux distribution live on the laptops on my local stores, which I was the sales manager on the computer department.
I love it. That's funny because I ask people, like a lot of times, have you ever walked into your local store and installed Linux on a computer in there, and here you're doing it at your job?
Well, I could do it. So there was the April of the 1st. I asked my store manager if I can do it, and he said yes. So I put every disk we had there in our laptops. They have Ubuntu or whatever. So all the Windows laptops, we switched out and put some Linux disks in, and we even changed the price shield. So everybody comes in, and if somebody was asking for a Windows machine, we said, no, we don't have it, but we have Linux machines here. Let's take a look.
Nice. Is there any software out there that you would like to see come to Linux that's not currently available for Linux?
Well, obviously some applications you can do taxes properly on, because if you have the government software, I think some of them are switching over to web-based applications, so which is a good thing in that purpose, though they have everything stored on their end, which is fine. Based on that, or as you mentioned, banking apps, because that is one of the parts a lot of people need. Right. If you have Telegram and stuff, that is already ported over to the Linux phones. But in general, yeah, some key applications. You can do everything like Office, audio coding, and editing with a Linux machine, even play games. But some small key functions, or like the governments, some switch over to Linux and then switch back. It's always the game, what kind of software are they using? And if you work in a government area, they have long release cycles. Last one I worked was for the unions, the work unions in IT support. They had Windows machines and Windows servers and applications where you had to even I asked the guys who created the software if they have a distribution or a plan what they do with the software, and they said no. We simply fix when there's something. We go directly in the database and change the table. And I said, what is going on with you guys? Or if they change something, they change directly in the code. So they had a weird distribution, like you have an executable, which then starts a shell script. And based on the shell script, they had the files and copied it over the place. And I asked, hey, can we redeploy everything? And I said, no, because some of the files we only modified for your company. We didn't have a copy of that on their end. So I said, okay, so I have to do the Microsoft way, all the old chunk, and copy the old folder with all the files in it, put the other thing on top, and then hopefully think everything works. So I had to call with the manufacturer of the software. I had to go to my distributor. So they did something like a Windows cloud distribution. So they used virtual machines, and they created one whole chunk of software on top of it, where all the software is. And as soon as you change the software, all the departments have to approve it. And then ask them, okay, when I change one software, how long does it take? Half a year. Why? Because 350 softwares have to be approved for the change.
So you might get your change done in, I don't know, another year or two.
Yeah. It was really fun because besides of drinking coffee and stuff, there was nothing much to do inside of, hey, you have an issue, and talk to the manufacturer and then to the customer who has the issue. And yeah, it was like there was a lot involved in there. So I had a lot of free time.
Yeah. So you've been in Linux for a long time. Thinking about the reasons that you chose to run Linux when you first started, do those reasons still apply today?
Yes, because I understand what software I have, and I can change it if I need it, and know what's running underneath. So I know what's going on, and it's always good to have full control or almost the controls. I built my computers since childhood with the components I wanted, and this I do with the software on top of it as well. So I know what I put in. I can fix stuff. I always used AMD hardware through all my career, and I use them as long as they're fit. So recently I just updated this year my working machine again. So always the purpose what you do. So if your machine is good, then use it, and if there's some new hardware out there, then you can go for it when it is. And don't need the latest and greatest. I updated from a Ryzen 1 to a Ryzen 2, even so Ryzen 3 is out there, but
right.
The gain and the stability is not there yet. So it's always good to wait at least one, buy something what is 1 year older than the actual one, because it has to endure in Linux.
Yep. This is true. You see all of the new Threadripper processors coming out, and the brand new ones people will buy, and they still got to wait for it to work in Linux, because even though some of the AMD code is in the kernel, not maybe the latest or greatest of that. So still got to wait a couple months at least for it to be there in general.
I think it will get better. The last bug with Threadripper is fixed in the actual release candidate of the 5.5. I think now they are fully supported and find the issue. Then it takes a little time to go to the old stable releases of the kernel. But I think if you see what Greg and Sasha is doing right now, it's a heck of a job to backport all the patches. Yeah.
Yep. Is there anything else you want to share with people, Phil?
I think everything is fine, and I showed everything. Yeah.
Okay. How can people get in touch with you?
Well, they can get in touch with me over LinkedIn for company-related stuff, or they can simply chat with me in Telegram. We have some channels for the developers internally, so it's not public in Telegram, but you can reach me there as well. Then we have an Irc channel I'm almost not in, so it's people you find there, but mostly not me. in the forum I'm mostly, so you can simply tag me or write me PM or write something, and mostly I answer still in the forum or write me an email. So yeah, a lot of ways.
Phil, I want to take a moment and I want to thank you for all of the work and effort that you've put into everything over the years in Linux, starting from the installer in Paldo to all the way up to today, to all of the effort that you put into Manjaro. And I think that you have the community in mind when you make decisions and when you do things. And I just want to say thank you for all of that work.
Yeah, it's also you do a great job with your promoting of the Linux and being part of the network you are in. Yeah, always you do this job like promoting everything and talking about Linux, and we do the development. So a huge community, and it's great to have you and me in that same community to be part of it.
Agreed. Thank you for joining me, Phil. I appreciate it.
Welcome.
All right, that's going to wrap it up. Thank you all for joining us this week as we spotlight the best thing about Linux, our community. Until next time, long live Linux. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. All right, let's get the show on the road. There are a lot of people who feel they can't contribute to Linux in a meaningful way because they're not a developer. They don't have like that kind of talent. But everybody has something to give. What would you say to those people who are searching for ways to contribute to Linux and still have it be like a meaningful way to contribute? Hey, there you are. Do I shut the power down?
You talked about something. You pressed the button or what?
No, I didn't even know you were gone. I sat there and asked you a whole nother question.
I was out by the word so I'm blank.
Yeah. So, well, we'll just start over. So don't worry about it.